Welcome to the Walker Schools Parent Portal Training Part 3, Emergency Contacts and Authorized Drivers. By the time you've reached video 3, you have successfully logged into our new Parent Portal, and based on the information in Part 2, you have updated your contact card and turned on or off notifications, and also learned where the School Help resource board is in our software. So let's go ahead and get started with Emergency Contacts and Authorized Drivers. I'm going to go ahead and sign into the parent portal again as my test parent. And as we covered in part 2, we do land on the resource page. You can change it to news if you want to within the, if you go back into your settings, there is the landing page option. I'm going to go ahead and go back into the profile, which is where the emergency contacts live, and back into the contact card, and down to the emergency contact section. Now, as the parent, it is not necessary to have anything listed under emergency contacts. Obviously, if there's an emergency involving you on campus, we're going to be calling 911. The emergency contacts are important for your children, so that we know who to contact after we have called 911 in the case of an emergency. So again, as the parent, emergency contacts, you can leave that blank. What we want to do is we want to update the emergency contacts for our children. So if we go ahead and click any one of our kids, in this example, LS Pilot Experiment is one of my children, you'll see I have emergency contacts listed here. Now, before we actually get in to modify them, I do have to mention if you have a primary school or lower school student, so that's anywhere from early learners up through the 5th grade, we were able to bring over your emergency contacts that you specified in the online enrollment. Unfortunately, we were not able to for middle school and upper school students, so if you have a middle school or upper school student, you will need to come in and set these. You may come in and decide that everything looks fine if you do have a primary and lower school student, and that's okay too. The order that it appears here is editable, so I'm going to go ahead and show you that. But what we're looking at is if a teacher or the nurse pulls up your student's profile card, this is the order that you've specified for emergency contacts. So if we go into Manage Phones, you'll see that I have two columns here. One is active, one is inactive. When we create a new contact, it's going to appear under the inactive column. We then will have to drag it over to the active section to make it live. We can also change the order of emergency contacts simply by clicking and dragging to a different spot. So for this example, I want the Parent Pilot Experiment, I want my home number, for whatever reason, to be first on the list. So I can simply drag it up here to the number 1 spot. Everything else shifts down, and then I can hit save. And you'll see now in the order I've got my home phone number listed here first. I also can add a new emergency contact, and to do that we just click create a new phone number. We're going to say the first name and last name. In this example, I want Aunt Sally to be someone who we contact if we can't reach the first two. I'm going to say this is my aunt, and this is her wireless number. It is 770-666-5555, and I'm going to add that. So now it has created it as an inactive emergency contact. I want it to be, oh, I already added her, didn't realize that. I want her to be the 3rd person to call. Aunt Sally, this is her twin, who's also named Sally with a different phone number, but you can see here it should make sense. We created a new contact, it appeared as inactive, and we moved it over to the active section and hit save. Okay, so that's the basic gist of emergency contacts. Again, like I said, primary school, lower school parents, your emergency contacts should have been brought over. You may have to do a little bit of manipulation. Middle school and upper school parents, you will need to go ahead and add the emergency contacts into the list. So as far as emergency contacts, that is all we need to discuss. If you are a middle or upper school parent, at this point you can discontinue the video. We are going to just talk about authorized drivers, which only involves the primary school and the lower school at this point. So if you are a primary school, lower school parent, sometimes you may want to, anyone who is listed in your emergency contact list is also an authorized driver for the school. So they are allowed to pick up your child if they are listed in here. Now, you may have an authorized driver who you do not want to contact during some sort of emergency. If that's the case, what we need to do is when we mention the relationship, we want to actually say authorized driver. That way we know as a staff that this person is allowed to pick up your child, but is not going to be on the list of people to contact. And typically we're going to ask that you put them towards the bottom anyway. So I'm going to add maybe a new college kid who is allowed to pick up my child. So let's say college student. Let's do first name is college, last name is student, and this is an authorized driver and friend. And let's say this really doesn't matter because we're not going to contact them, but let's say that this is, and we're going to add the entry, and we're going to drag them over towards the bottom of the list and hit save. So now my college student is an authorized driver, so we can ensure that they are allowed to pick up your child, but they will not be contacted if it's an emergency contact because you have specified that they are only an authorized driver. So just to recap what we covered today, again, we want to make sure that we have the emergency contacts and authorized drivers set for our students. So to set those, if we go into our profile and scroll down, you'll see that we have the relationships for our students. Of course, emergency contacts for the parents, not necessary to fill in. If we go into each of our students, we want to make sure that the emergency contacts are set how we want them to set. If we want to change the order, we click Manage Phones and we drag the order up and down as a different to rearrange. And if we want to add someone new, we go to Manage Phones and we create a new phone number. If we want that person to only be an authorized driver, then we specify that when we say the relationship. And that pretty much covers everything in part 3, and we will move on with part 4. Thanks for watching.